Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our July 21st, 2026 Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District meeting. And the first item of business is to call this meeting to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next item is to swear in Manager Boyles for another 3-year term on our board.
That's it.
Yeah, you're there, Frank. Okay.
Thank you very much.
So repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Frank Boyles,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
of manager of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District to the best of my judgment and ability.
of manager of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And I don't know if you have to sign that.
Yeah, she's got one.
Okay, that takes care of those formalities. And now we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. I don't believe there's any changes that I note from staff, nothing from the board. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Manager Tofinelli, second by Manager Burnett. All who approve of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That motion carries. All right, now we're going to go to public comment. For anybody who wants to address the Board of Managers on an item that's not on their agenda or the consent agenda, you can come forward at this time if you wish to speak. And I think everybody is here for an item on the agenda. So, okay, we're going to move on to item 5.0, which is a Buck Stream Bank Stabilization Phase 2 project ordering. This is a public hearing, so I would need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Burnett, second by Manager Morkenberg. All in favor of that motion of opening the public hearing, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Okay, so now we're going to have a report on this project from staff.
Great. So the project ordering is part of state statute when we get to around 30% design to bring it in front of public and have a board vote to proceed with ordering of the project and proceeding with implementation. So the Buck Stream project is an area that was identified in the Upper Watershed Blueprint as highly erosive, contributing both phosphorus and sediment to Buck Lake, which feeds in to Spring Lake. Phase 1 of the stream stabilization was completed in 2024 with some funds from Scott Soil and Water Conservation District as well as district funds, and that stabilized around 1,300 feet. Just at the beginning of this year, end of last year, Scott Soil and Water let us know that they had some more grant funds for stream stabilization projects, and we began considering the idea of extending this project from where we finished phase 1 down to its outlet into Buck Lake. You can see on that photo on the screen, the purple circle shows that sediment is reaching the lake and kind of creating this sediment delta in there. So you can actually visually see the impact here. And we worked with landowners that are on those downstream sections. They were interested, and so we proceeded with moving design to 30% for the purpose of bringing this forward for board vote. As the estimates go with the draft design, we would have around 75 pounds of phosphorus removed. That's based on the previous phase estimates. And then the total project cost, including engineering, legal, Inspection and construction would be around $148,700. We have a commitment from Scott Soil and Water Conservation District to use $65,000 of grant funds to support the project. And the design would look really similar to phase one. So utilizing the materials that are on site to make a really cost-efficient design, stabilize those banks, remove invasive plant species that don't allow for deep rooting in the riparian areas. And so with that, I'll pause for any public comment.
Okay, first of all, ask any questions for Emily from the board. Not seeing any? No, Frank, do you have a question? No? Okay, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak on this project, this is your opportunity to speak before the board. Okay. We got thumbs up over there. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Manager Morkenberg, second by Manager Boyles. Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Okay, so now we do have, to order this project, we have to adopt Resolution 26-416. Anyone want to make that motion? Manager Boyles?
Sure. I move Resolution 26-416, ordering the Buckstream Stabilization Phase 2 project.
Motion made by Manager Boyles, second by Manager Burnett. Any discussion on that resolution from the board? Any discussion? Manager Morkenberg.
No, I think it's a good project and a continuation of the project that we did the last few years, phase one. And it would be fun to, if you have, it sounds like you have willing landowners here, just like we did at the first project there. It would be fun to do a presentation with like the landowners from the first project, and you probably have a video from that, I believe, and then combine it with this. But these are, I remember when we were out there to see the project, they were so happy, and you looked at what the stream looked like now compared to before was very different. So good luck with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one quick question, Emily. Is this project still going to get done this year?
No, it would be planned for construction in 2027.
It'll be next year, okay. Very good. Okay, so there's been a motion made and seconded for Resolution 26-416. I assume everybody's ready to vote, so all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. 5-0, and that takes care of the Buckstream Stabilization Project. Okay, so now we're going to go to projects or programs and project update from staff. And who's going to take this one first? Zach?
Thank you, Manager Loney.
Yep.
I'm just going to touch briefly on lake levels since we've received some public inquiries on lake levels dropping. So as you can see on the couple graphs of Prior Lake and Spring Lake water levels, that they are dropping rather quickly with the lack of rain and the high temperatures that we've been having.
Another program update is that we, at our ferric chloride system, worked to try and locate our ferric chloride feed line. It actually qualifies us as a private utility, as a buried line. And when it was constructed, it wasn't properly marked for staff to locate. It was buried, directionally bored, and it is in two PVC type pipes, which are hard to detect under several feet of soil. We have been working to find a contractor that would come out and utilize ground penetrating radar systems. We got a company that had some confidence with the initial information we gave them, came out on site and attempted to locate it. Their professional determination was that it was undetectable based on the depth and the materials of the pipes. and the fact that there wasn't a tracer wire installed in the initial installation, which would be standard practice then and today. So they also gave an opinion that due to the depth, which is a minimum of 4 feet, likely more than 6 by the road, that it's at low risk to interception in other construction activities, and provided us with documentation of what we do know and the ends we went to locate it. And so the plan is that once the lifespan of this feed line is met, which is within the next 20 to 30 years, that we would drill a new line and have a tracer wire installed. That company did recommend mapping it as well, so not only knowing where it is, but how deep it is in those locations when it's installed, which was, I think, a good recommendation from them. So that's where the feed line locating is at today. And with that, I'll pause before we move on to projects, if there are questions on that.
And it's not possible to put a tracing wire into it?
There's not enough space, yeah, and it's a very long line. Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to projects, we'll touch on 3 projects today. The first one is Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. As you know, we constructed this through the end of last year and completed it this spring. Those stop logs, which actually are the things that build up water high enough to get water into our system, were delayed at the manufacturers. And so we missed our essentially spring rainfalls, and then had a very dry late spring, early summer here. So we have yet to see water get over that rock berm that you see in the picture into the sand filter. So the bioretention basin has been filled consistently, primarily with drain tile that is outletting in there, but we haven't been able to monitor or test the effectiveness of that filter this year. So the monitoring equipment has been moved so that we can get some data out of other sites. It's unfortunate, but it also, we knew when we constructed this that this would be a flashy site. So unfortunately this year was dry, and in the positive, we will save some money on maintenance because there's no tilling needed when there's no use happening there. There will be a public tour, which will have some outreach items that have been developed, film, and some 3D visuals. That's going to be part of our Watershed Week in August. And so we look forward to showing that off to the public and continuing to see this success fold out in the next year. And maybe this fall, too, if we get more flows. Another project update was on the 200th Street Pond alum treatment. This project was to meet goals on Fish Lake. There's a small pond on 200th Street that was initially dug for watering cattle. We tested the soil here. It's very high in phosphorus and it has an internal load in itself. And so we dosed the first treatment on that pond on June 30th. It was monitored the entire time, very low amount of alum for a small pond. The sediment cores were taken last week to see how that went, and based on those results, when we receive those, we'll likely, we're expecting to need a second dose. We dosed very conservatively in the first to just make sure that we were staying within bounds. So we'll assess and see how much that second dose needs to be.
All right, the PLOC Segment 1 North Channel Enhancement Project was completed early July. It was pretty quick construction, about just over 2 weeks. The main site is kind of in the center there. I have some pictures on the bottom right-hand corner. So the main project was reconnecting floodplains, stabilizing banks, and clearing invasives and reseeding. The neighboring landowners were really great to work with on this site. We were able to do a little bit extra invasives management, working with the landowners. This is kind of the last major site from the 2014 floods that required stabilization. And then also as part of this project, we were able to repair some small repairs that from previous work from the 2014 flood, mostly just moving some boulders around that have shifted since. So kind of did 4 projects in one with this, the main site and 3 additional sites. And excitingly, we're expected to come in over $14,000 under the original contract price. That's even with a change order to add some additional repair work just before they got started with construction. And the total project price is looking to be over $50,000 under the work plan budget for the entire project. So really great work, really natural design, utilized a lot of materials from on site, a lot of those trees that were taken down that were kind of nuisance species like box elders were used in the design. So really exciting that we were able to get this done and so quickly and well done.
Any questions, comments? I was going to say one thing about this dry weather. It's great for doing water projects or getting things done. Not too many rain days or delays. Okay, very, very good. Thank you. Good report.
Thanks for saving money.
Okay, so now we are going to go to item 6.2, which is delegate selection, Minnesota Watersheds 2026 Annual Meeting on Resolutions and Petitions. Administrator Gacy, you have this report?
Yes. President Loney and managers. The Minnesota Annual Meeting on Resolutions and Petitions will be held on August 31st, 2026. At this meeting, delegates from watershed districts across the state will be voting to approve the proposed legislative platform. And the primary activity that will occur as part of this meeting is to vote on proposed legislative resolutions that were submitted by various watershed districts and reviewed by the Minnesota Watersheds Legislative Committee, which Manager Burnett sits on. The watershed districts are able to have 2 managers attend the August 31st meeting to vote on behalf of the district on the proposed resolutions and platform. It also allows for the watershed district to designate 1 alternate in case one of the other delegates is unable to attend. At the workshops, managers discussed or expressed their interest to serve in this position. So based on that discussion, the motion is to appoint managers Burnett and Loney as delegates and Manager Boyles as an alternate to vote on behalf of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District at the Minnesota Watersheds 2026 Annual Meeting on Resolutions and Petitions.
Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Manager Boyles and seconded by Manager Burnett. Any discussion? We did discuss this quite a bit at our workshop, so I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say. I assume you're ready to vote, so all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Okay,
Mr. President, is it appropriate for us to append any comments to these? Was that what you were thinking
yeah.
tonight? Our comments about the first 4 items being put together, for example, and a special emphasis of the AIS money that is a high priority, and general reference to power boats as opposed to just wake boats.
So Manager Boyles, the comments that were brought forward at the workshop is really now the responsibility of the delegates that were just selected to bring forward those comments
Okay.
and bring them forward for discussion at the August 31st meeting.
okay,
Thank you for the clarification.
yep. Very good. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 6.3, which is Westview Estates Declaration of Conservation Easement. Who's going to take it? Joni's going to take
President
this one.
Loney and managers. So Rule J, District Rule J, calls for the establishment of buffers adjacent to wetlands and watercourses to protect these resources. Rule J also calls for landowners to dedicate a conservation easement over the buffers to the watershed district. Given that we are not the permitting authority, we use a two-step process to accomplish this. First, we obtain a development agreement that provides a means for the watershed district to recover our costs for establishing these conservation easements and to establish the price for our escrows. And then second, there is where the landowner provides a declaration of conservation easement for manager's review and approval. So Westview Estates is located in the northwest corner of Vergas Avenue and County Road 10, as shown in this image. And the area of the site that is proposed for subdivision is this area in, once again, I'll call it the southeast quadrant of the parcel. As you can see, there is quite a large wetland in that area already. The proposed development is really just to do subdivision for 3 individual lots at right near the intersection of Vergas and County Road 10. Once again, there is a wetland, so that does once again trigger our Rule J. And the development agreement was approved by the board at the June meeting, and that development agreement has been executed and recorded. The engineer has reviewed the proposed conservation easement buffers and has affirmed that they are in compliance with the District Rule J. The developer has also already provided the signed declaration of conservation easement, the escrow funds, and the mortgage consent, which were originally called out in the board motion for the board approval to be contingent upon those 3 elements. Those all have already been received and approved by staff. Therefore, the proposed motion is to approve the Westview Estates Declaration of Conservation Easement and authorize the execution by the district administrator.
Okay. Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Burnett,
Second.
second by Manager Morkenberg. And I think Joni did mention that 3 conditions have been met, so that's why that's been taken off our memo. Any discussions on the motion? Any discussion? Anybody? Okay. I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say aye. Motion carried, 5-0. Okay. We're going to move on to item 6.4, which is a Lydia Prime Central Developers Development Agreement. And Manager Greasy, or Administrator Greasy, is going to handle this one too.
All right, President Loney, managers. So there is a proposed development located in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Highway 13 and Highway 10 near Lydia. This area is currently agricultural land with actually County Ditch 13 running adjacent and kind of halfway through the parcel. There are 4 wetlands that have been delineated within the site, therefore triggering Rule J, which would require for the creation of wetland buffers and the dedication of conservation easements. So consistent with our conservation easement approach that was just described with Westview Estate, we are bringing forward the development agreement for the board's review and approval today. The development agreement is an approach, once again, for the district to recover our costs to process the conservation easement. It also identifies the cost per square foot for the required escrow for vegetation establishment. It commits the landowner to provide the declaration of conservation easement within 30 days of approval of this agreement. And the development team is already working with the district engineer for review of the required buffers. So staff is recommending a motion to approve the Lydia Prime Central Development Agreement. So the motion is to approve the Lydia Prime Central Development Agreement for execution and recording by the district administrator, conditioned upon the receipt of the signed and notarized development agreement.
Okay, so we can have some discussion. Somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Morkenberg,
Second.
second by Manager Boyles. Okay, so now we can have some discussions. Any questions of staff on the proposal? Any? Manager Tofinelli.
The one comment on here, the buffer is yet to be determined. I'm assuming that the plan will adhere to all buffer requirements.
Yes, Manager Tofinelli, yes. The review with the district engineer will affirm that it meets our requirements. And engineer, Carl?
I just chime in, since the board packet was issued, we have reviewed and accepted the buffers and conveyed that to Troy at the SWCD. I'm not sure if it's made it back to Matt.
Okay, all right. I have an interesting list of parcels there, and that's County Ditch 13 that runs through there, isn't there? Through those parcels?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so is part of, I mean, we're looking at buffers right now, but it looks like we have an opportunity to do some really good water quantity and water quality management on this development. Does that come in later, or how does that come in?
Carl would like to answer that?
Mr. Chair, the development stormwater management proposal includes 5 stormwater basins, either NERP or filtration basins. Actually, they all have filtration benches, even on the larger NERP ponds. So they're addressing on-site stormwater management.
Okay,
I think this is one of the areas that was looked at southeast of here by the SWCD, and there wasn't necessarily, I'll maybe let Emily speak to that if you want to go further with that, but there's a lot of additional parcels involved to do anything in terms of like a control structure along County Ditch 13 to do something more regional. It's a much broader basin that involves more parcels.
I mean, all we see right now is wetlands. We don't see the actual development.
Correct.
Do we get to see that later?
They're typically within the, the conservation easement. Well, that just shows the buffers that will be approved. And that really is the point of our rules. And, if you want to see the development as part of that, we could certainly show it. But once again, our rules are, we do make sure that the development is compliant with our rules.
Okay, so we're dealing with right now just the buffers.
That is correct.
Okay,
And our comments regarding the stormwater are, once again, the permitting authority is Scott County. So we provide review comments to Scott County, who then forwards that through to the developer through the permitting process.
okay. This is a development. Does the applicant wish to make any comments on anything?
Joni does a bang-up job, and so really I'm just here to make sure if you have any questions that she doesn't know, that I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, very good. Sounds like you've met our requirements.
Yeah,
So-
yep, yeah, we were able to work through the buffers. We couldn't do anything to speak of, anything meaningful with infiltration. The soils out there are not conducive to infiltration, but we were able to do a lot of water quality enhancement there through the different ponds.
Okay, All right. We did have a motion and a second to approve this Lydia Prime Central Development Agreement. Any other questions, Manager Morkenberg?
Yes, do we know what type of developments are going in there? Is it an industrial site or? Yep.
Yeah, it's a rural industrial park. So if you're familiar, Newmarket Township has two of these types of business parks that have gone in here recently. Sand Creek Township has two of them that have gone in as well. If you think about Dairy Lane, if you're familiar with that street there, it's that type of a development where businesses, in this case, there's one township road that kind of comes through the middle of the properties, and we'll have, we ended up with 15 lots total within the neighborhood. You know, that's what we're showing platted. There's nothing to say that somebody couldn't buy a couple of them and combine them depending on what their individual needs are.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any other questions? Okay. I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Same sign. Motion carried, 5-0. Good luck. Looks like a nice project.
We hope so.
Okay, so now we're going to go to item 6.5, amendment to EOR desilt and high flow bypass engineering scope of services. And Emily, I assume you're going to lead it off?
I will take it. So to refresh our memories and for the benefit of the public, we've been looking at improvements to our desiltation pond, which is where our ferric chloride gets applied. It is highly related to the system currently as it is impacted by the lake levels in Spring Lake. So we're looking at improvements that can increase our efficiency of treatment, make it more effective monitoring and carp exclusion. And in our feasibility, we identified 3 different elements that would have a good result in doing those things: having an additional inlet, constructing an outlet, and then raising our bypass weir. So we've been beginning the design process there. We had a Braun come out and do borings to inform our design and make sure we had soils that we could build off of. The borings near the high flow bypass were favorable. And however, when we went to bore near the outlet, so that yellow circle on the map, we went down to a depth of 36 feet, which we weren't anticipating going that deep, so the borers didn't have the equipment to go deeper at that date, but we were unable to find solid, suitable soils up to 36 feet. And so this scope amendment is really looking to give us the funds to go back and do deeper borings. The deeper borings will allow us to find at what depth do we have soils that we could build off of. And without knowing that number, we really don't we can't have a good, intelligible conversation about what our options are and what are the cost implications. We've talked about the importance of this outlet and why we would go beyond 36 feet. And the reasons for that would be, number one, currently the way the outlet is designed, there could be issues with our permit compliance. We know that ferric chloride is not staying to our pond perfectly. So that is something that we should be rectifying. Additionally, we really struggle to exclude carp from that pond. We know that they love to be there, which is a problem for phosphorus in Spring Lake. And then lastly, our ability to monitor ferric chloride treatment becomes challenging when there's not a standardized outlet. So those are kind of the reasons that we feel it's important to understand what options we have for improving that outlet. We would propose approving the amendment for $12,000 and then coming back to you with the outcome of those results so that we can discuss what that means for the design. We know that even at 36 feet, it will be a more more challenging and costly design than we had initially anticipated. But without doing that boring, we don't know how much or what is reasonable. So we would bring that back before proceeding with developing design off of that. In the memo and the scope amendment, we said up to 65 feet. And that's based on just the nearest well log shows that soils become suitable at 65 feet for that location. It's our best guess, but we are hopeful that it will be less than that. So, but not, we don't want to be overly optimistic too. We want to have real numbers that we can plan off of and design off of. We don't want to design in the dark. So with that, I'll pause for questions.
Well, I have one. I'm looking at the drawing. The new outlet weir, is that going to be in the same spot where the existing one is?
Correct.
And I guess my experience has been if you got 36 feet of bad soil, is it peat or muck or whatever it is,
Pete?
going deeper to find, I mean, you're still going to have 36 feet of bad soil.
Correct.
And unless you're going to be drilling some very deep piling or pump, that's going to be very expensive. And I'm surprised there wasn't some other options given than just another soil boring. I mean, if you can supercharge the soil, consolidate it, you can use lightweight fill, there's other options that I know of that could be done. And instead of spending $10,000 or $12,000 on a boring, which is going to probably indicate you're going to have to do something besides drill down huge piling in that area. I don't know what the cost would be. I'm guessing somebody would know what that cost is. It's got to be horrendous in that type of soil. But
Mr. Chair, I can let you know that, we are considering other options, but all of them we would need to know the full depth of peat or clay. So you mentioned surcharging or preloading. We would need to characterize the soil and know the depth of the different types of soils and the pore space in those to actually do the calculations for the preload weight and duration of preloading, which even at 30-some feet might be a year of preloading to get density.
what is the soil there now, down to 36 feet? Is it peat?
We don't have the full log back, but the email from Braun is they had about 35 feet of peat, and then we're hitting clay around 38. And the nearby well log for the house to the west had clay all the way down to 65 feet before mineral soils, sand, and gravel were encountered. On the flip side, over at the high flow bypass, that had mineral soils at 15 feet. So we were originally anticipating that it was going to be something in between, but it seems like it's deeper, soft pore soils. So we'd still, even if we'd want to consider concrete with deeper footings, we would need a preload or a surcharge, but we need to know what actually is out there in order to do the calculations for if an option of preloading is pursued for either concrete or a floating slab or even Fleximat, which is a little bit lighter weight option as well. So we are exploring a handful, but in the absence of additional full characterization, we would have to go conservative and use the assumption based on the well log of the property owner to the west, which if we go that conservatively, it's definitely going to drive up costs being conservative. So we're trying to save costs by spending a little bit more on the front end.
Well, I'm seeing you got 35 feet of peat, and unless you're going to drill piling down that deep or really surcharge, I mean, somebody should have done some calculations ahead of time here in my book. from my experience, and I've dealt with 35 feet of peat in many projects. So, anybody else got any questions? I just think that we're spending money that, in the hope of finding something else that we should have probably looked at, different organizations, different alternatives. But that's my opinion. They sound like they need to have this, so.
That's good.
Matt?
I'm just gonna go with the assumption that that's the only location for that outlet wear. That there's no options to move that to a different location. And assuming's a very fat word, so. Because I'm just hearing that that's a, right now, that looks to be a terrible spot. Do we have an alternative?
That's an interesting question. I think moving the outlet would still require you to end up with a berm at that location that would be subject to settling. And we'd want it to be, you know, a good material that would be on there, so I still think you're ending up doing some preloading to do a berm there, and then we'd still advise that we'd get another boring at the new potential location. So, I mean, it kind of feels like, I like the concept, but I feel like we'd be chasing our tail a little bit at getting it a boring at a different location.
I mean, we've had an outlet weir there for how many years?
Since it was built in the 80s, and it has either eroded or settled over time. And the difference is what's out there right now is probably one of the lighter options, riprap with a little bit of grout that's degraded. That's not necessarily off the table, but that doesn't address some of Emily's points that the district felt it was important. It wouldn't allow you to have the carp exclusion, the permit compliance, and the ability to accurately monitor at that location. So originally, the least expensive option, the least headache, which doesn't meet the goals, was not really pursued. If you decide to move forward with the additional boring and we come back with options other than that, then I think you have another discussion on, are those cost beneficial to meet all your goals?
I guess I'm just a little miffed on how this is, that we need this extra boring to go down to 65 feet. And we don't have boring logs of the 36 feet.
We have the
have
draft.
boring logs?
Yeah, we have the informal from Braun. We don't have the full report with all the lab analysis. We have basically the rough draft.
So did Braun make the recommendation to go down to 65 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Ron's geotechnical engineer is recommending that, and actually they said they would advance it up to 80 feet if necessary, but hopefully we're less than 65.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll be entertaining a motion.
Just a question, probably obvious to everyone else, but what do we have invested in this already?
Well,
I mean, it seems like when I put
200.
$12,000 into this, with no guarantee of anything.
yeah. This is just gonna, I don't know what's gonna give us other than,
And maybe that's just the nature of the beast, I don't know.
yeah.
I could tell you one aspect. I don't have the full, what is the district expenditure, but this is just right at or slightly exceeding the administrator's authority for the 10% in a change order for engineering services, of which Braun Intertech would be a sub to us to do the work. Did I say just over?
Yeah, we're at like 10.9% or 11% of the total contract for UR. But even separate from that, we wanted to make sure you were aware of this development because it does mean that that outlet, the options for that outlet will likely look different than what we expected in the feasibility study because we couldn't see underground.
And I can,
It's just not a big dollar amount for the overall project. It's not a big dollar amount.
well,
I
the
think we got
overall project's
250.
130K, right?
We got 250,000 budgeted for next year.
And I think when you look at these three components of the proposed work for the desiltation pond, the combined effect of that would have significant phosphorus reduction, so it will amplify the effect of the iron chloride treatment. So that's the whole perspective. So the outlet weir is only one part of it. The raised high flow bypass is a second part, and then we also change the inlet pipes to make it more effective. So there's a, like, as I understand it, a three-part solution that would make a big difference with phosphorus removal, which is important for Spring Lake.
Well, I entertain a motion or question that?
Yeah, Carol, if we're going back out boring again, are there any other sites to consider when the equipment's out there to look at? I know I'm kind of asking that again, but I'm thinking with the boring equipment being out there, is that, you can tell us, I have no clue if there's even an option.
I mean, I think I'd want to sleep on it just a little bit, but my recollection is, you know, looking at that basin on screen, everything at the north end of the pond and to the west is a berm that's been, an earthen berm that's kind of been constructed to create the grade of the north side of the pond, and then it's just wetland. I don't know fully the history of the upland between the pond and the ditch, if that is original spoils. I mean, from a flow path perspective, it's at the best location for reconnecting to the Spring Lake channel. Yeah, from a flow perspective, that's really where we need to be.
Okay.
Without
Well,
major
I can't-
additional
I-
excavation.
I can't tell you, if, you know,
Yeah.
it's in the wrong spot. I'm just, with the equipment out there, I'm just,
all wetland.
and you were talking about the depth by the house versus, and, you know, not being, you know, I didn't assume it would be a constant slope. So I was just looking to see if there's some place that, once you get the facts, you'd see if the cost, there's some options there, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we discussed this enough. We need a motion to approve the EOR desilt and high flow bypass engineering scope of service amendment.
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Morkenberg, second by Manager Tofinelli. Any more discussion? Discussion? Okay. So we ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Did you say something?
Yes, I said.
4-1. Okay, we're moving on to the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is the financial report through June of 2026. And overall, we are in good financial condition. As you know, the administrative fund expenses tends to be higher this part of the year because we are front-loaded with the expenses early in the year, like insurance and other things. Overall, the implementation fund are on track, and these expenditures are meeting the goal for the time of the year that we are in, but we know that we eventually get more expenses that come in towards the end of the year, even into next year. The Upper Prior Lake treatment invoice was paid, and Emily brought forward that there would be a cost overage from this project, and so I think we'll do a formal budget amendment to address the overage, and it basically is, I think if I'm correct, it looks like 77K, is that correct? Something like that, and I think we have our alum reserve where we can appropriately take the money from.
Yep, that's correct. The full number will come next month, but it'll be more than 77,000.
Yep. We are contacting developers with restricted funds related to permitting, and if we eventually can't reach them, which we have tried and will keep trying, we may make a submission of abandoned unclaimed property to the state of Minnesota. Overall, we have adequate funds to cover our activities this year. The cash flow right now reflects that we got our first property tax payment, and also that we paid for the PLOC bank stabilization. You can see as you look through the cash flow that we will have a drawdown of the district's cash reserves over the next year. And in 2026, it will pretty much go down with $1 million. And that more or less corresponds to the cost for the alum treatment for Upper Prior Lake. Next month, we will adjust the cash flow statement, and it will be updated to look through June 2027. So that's a nice thing that we can look further out. And we work with CLA, our accountants, to do those projections. The updated cash flow statements will also include an estimated grant funds, approximately $1 million that we'll get from Bowser later this year. So very significant. Thank you so much for writing good grants, and it's amazing we got it. And that will help us get some very big projects going, a lot of them at the upper watershed, and those are sort of aimed at helping Spring Lake reduce the influx of phosphorus into Spring Lake. So we're spending a substantial amount of money on upstream projects. The cost analysis, you can look at the different payments that we are doing. And again, you can look at our contractors. You can see we paid Scott Soil and Water invoice. We paid the Upper Prior Lake alum treatment. So those are things you can see there. Overall, you're in good condition. Any questions?
Any questions? Everything looks good?
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, and we're going to move on to the consent agenda. This is considered one item of business. Consists of routine administrative items or items not requiring discussions. Items can be removed from the consent agenda at request of the board member, staff member, or member of the audience. And you have to state which items or items you wish to remove for discussion. So on our consent agenda, we have meeting minutes of June 16th, 2026 workshop, and meeting minutes of June 16th, 2026 board meeting. We have the claims list and bank purchase card expenditures. We have a quarterly investment summary, an EOR PLOC segment 1 scope of service amendment, and resolution 26417 amending the 2026 budget to reallocate funds from 626 capital project planning to 550 Buck Stream stabilization phase 2. We talked about that project earlier. Resolution 26418, amending the 2026 budget to reallocate funds from 611 Highway 13 Wetland Ferric Chloride System and desal O&M to 550 Highway 13 Wetland Excavation. And finally, Sutton West Revised Development Agreement and Declaration of Conservation Easement. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Manager Boyles,
Second.
second by Manager Tofinelli. There's no discussion on these items. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. And now we're at this point of upcoming meetings and event schedule. Manager Boyles, could you read the item?
Thank you. This is the event schedule both for July, the remainder of July, and for the full month of August. The Community Advisory Committee will meet Thursday, July 30th, 6 p.m., here at Prior Lake City Hall in the Wagon Bridge Conference Room, which is downstairs. The Board of Managers workshop will be Tuesday, August 18th, 4 p.m., here again at City Hall. We think in the Parkview Conference Room. That might be a problem with voting. It will be somewhere in this building. Board of Managers meeting itself, that may be also a locational question, but that does take place Tuesday, August 18, at 6 p.m. We hope to be in here. And finally, don't miss Watershed Week, August 24th through the 29th. That's the last week in August. 3 activities thus far scheduled. Early Bird Nature Walk, August 24th, 8 to 9 a.m., and we prefer registration, just so we can make sure we've got appropriate plans for everyone. Second item is the Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Tour, August 25th, 6 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. Again, registration required. And finally, an art event on August 27th, 5 to 7 p.m. That too requires previous registration.
A lot going on next month. All right. So we have reached the end of our meeting. So I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Manager Morkenberg, second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. Motion carried. We're out of here. 7:06. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President.